I want to save it until literally I'm with a walker. I want to save all of it when I'm like,
In the world of Hollywood, few couples have garnered as much admiration as George Clooney and Amal Alamuddin. Clooney, the charismatic and handsome leading man, seemed to have it all: fame, wealth, and the adoration of millions. Amal, a brilliant human rights lawyer with a purpose-driven career, appeared to be his perfect match. Together they became the epitome of elegance, grace, and intellectual prowess. Their love story was straight out of a modern-day fairy tale, and for years they seemed to have it all: success, happiness, and the perfect family. However, as time went on, what seemed like an ideal relationship began to show signs of strain. Beneath the glamour and public smiles, cracks began to appear. This is the untold truth of how George Clooney and Amal Alamuddin's marriage evolved, from the perfect romance to a more complex and raw reality. The Golden Bachelor, who never wanted to settle down, before he found love with Amal, George Clooney was known as Hollywood's most eligible bachelor. His charm, wit, and effortless cool made him a beloved figure on and off the screen. For decades, Clooney was the face of the carefree bachelor lifestyle. After a short and painful marriage to actress Talia Balsam in the early 1990s, Clooney swore never to marry again. Instead, he immersed himself in his career, political causes, and a social circle full of fellow actors, directors, and philanthropists. Clooney enjoyed the freedom of being a single man, attending red carpet events, traveling the world, and living life on his own terms. Despite his public image as the ultimate bachelor, Clooney was not immune to the quiet loneliness that accompanied his lifestyle. As his career soared, fame and fortune began to feel less fulfilling. Deep down, he longed for something real, something lasting, but he never admitted it. While he kept busy with film sets, charity events, and political causes, he yearned for a partner who could match his intellect, challenge him, and share a life of purpose. A chance meeting and a life-altering change. Everything changed in 2013. Clooney was spending a quiet summer at his villa on Lake Como in Italy, enjoying a break from the pressures of his Hollywood career. During that time, a mutual friend introduced him to Amal Alamuddin, a human rights lawyer who had already made a name for herself with her work in international law. Amal wasn't dazzled by Hollywood or the lifestyle that Clooney had become so accustomed to. She was intelligent, composed, and driven by a passion to make a difference in the world. These were qualities George had never encountered in a partner before. When Amal entered his villa, George felt an immediate shift. Something changed within him, and he realized that everything in his life had led him to this moment. Clooney had been known for his independence, but there was something about Amal that made him reconsider his entire worldview. For the first time in years, he found himself thinking about a future that was no longer solitary. Over the next few months, their relationship blossomed quickly, and by April 2014, George had proposed to Amal in his kitchen. The proposal was filled with awkward laughter, nerves, and a shared sense of excitement. George had never been more certain of anything in his life, from Hollywood bachelor to devoted husband. In September 2014, Clooney and Amal married in a fairy tale wedding in Venice, Italy, surrounded by friends, family, and a flurry of cameras. It seemed like the perfect culmination of George's transformation from Hollywood bachelor to devoted husband. Their wedding was a symbolic moment, a new chapter in Clooney's life. He had gone from the charming, independent bachelor who swore off marriage to a loving husband and father. Their marriage was initially everything George had hoped for, a partnership built on mutual respect, shared values, and a sense of adventure. Amal continued her groundbreaking work in international law, representing high-profile clients, while George focused on his career, philanthropy, and eventually his family. The couple's twin children, Ella and Alexander, were born in 2017, and George described their birth as the greatest moment of his life. The couple became an iconic symbol of elegance, intellect, and social consciousness. Clooney, who had once filled his time with late nights and independence, was now deeply committed to his family. His relationship with Amal gave him a new sense of purpose. Together, they co-founded the Clooney Foundation for Justice, working toward humanitarian goals and supporting important legal causes. To the world, they were the epitome of a perfect couple. Their lives an ideal blend of glamour, grace, and a shared commitment to making the world a better place. The strain of distance and changing lives. As the years passed, however, the pressures of their respective careers began to take their toll. By 2025, George and Amal had been married for more than a decade, a lifetime in Hollywood terms. The couple, still outwardly perfect, began to face the reality of their busy, demanding lives. Amal had taken on a prestigious teaching role at the University of Oxford, while George prepared for his Broadway debut in Good Night and Good Luck. For the first time in years, they found themselves living on different continents, Amal in England and George in the United States. While both of them were deeply committed to their careers, the physical distance began to wear on their relationship. Amal's work was consuming, with international travel and high-profile cases taking up much of her time. At the same time, George was immersed in his Broadway commitments, with long hours of rehearsal and late-night performances. They made an effort to stay connected, often talking on the phone or FaceTiming when possible, but the demands of their careers began to create emotional distance between them. The couple had grown accustomed to being apart for brief periods due to their careers, but the time apart was starting to feel different. It wasn't just physical separation, it was emotional as well. The emotional strain that comes with being physically distant for extended periods of time started to chip away at the bond they had shared. Despite their best efforts to make the relationship work, it began to feel as if they were living separate lives. The tipping point, a night of regret. In June 2025, at the Tony Awards in New York, Clooney and Amal once again appeared to be the perfect couple. The public saw them smiling, hand in hand, just as they always had. However, behind the scenes, something was beginning to shift. Clooney, who had long prided himself on his discipline and self-control, had a relapse. After years of sobriety, he drank excessively that evening, something he had sworn off. The following day, he felt sick and embarrassed, though he tried to laugh it off. The public found his story endearing. After all, George Clooney had long been known for his charm, wit, and mischievous sense of humor. But for Amal, this wasn't just about one night of drinking. It was a reminder of the man George used to be, the carefree, reckless person she had fallen in love with all those years ago. She had always admired his ability to grow, to evolve into a devoted husband and father. The version of him that she had fallen in love with was someone who had outgrown those youthful, reckless behaviors. When George tried to downplay the incident, Amal made it clear that she couldn't overlook it. The relapse represented something deeper, the fact that George was slipping and that the man he had become was no longer the man she had married. For George, this was a moment of realization. It forced him to confront the fact that he was losing control in ways he hadn't anticipated. The cracks in their relationship were no longer something they could ignore. The quiet separation. Following the Tony Awards incident, the tension between the couple grew. Their lives, once intertwined, were becoming increasingly separate. Amal had taken their twins to England, where she focused on her academic and professional commitments. George, meanwhile, remained in New York, preparing for his Broadway debut. Though they stayed in touch and continued to support each other's careers, the emotional distance between them continued to grow. By March 2025, rumors began to swirl that George and Amal were living in a trial separation. While neither of them publicly confirmed the rumors, their actions spoke volumes. They were living in different worlds, each focused on their own careers and responsibilities. The once effortless connection they shared now felt strained, and despite their best efforts, they found it difficult to bridge the gap. Amal's schedule at Oxford was demanding, and her legal work was consuming. George, on the other hand, was fully invested in his Broadway career, which often meant long hours of rehearsal and performances late into the night. The distance, both physical and emotional, became more pronounced. They were still a family, still in contact, but the intimacy they once shared seemed to be slipping away. The future of George and Amal. By late 2025, it was clear that the pressures of fame, ambition, and distance had taken their toll on George and Amal's marriage. Though they continued to present a united front in public, their relationship had become more complicated. The idea of perfect love that the public had long associated with the Clooneys was no longer an accurate reflection of their reality. Their relationship had evolved, as relationships often do, into something less glamorous and more grounded in the struggles of real life. In private, George admitted that he was haunted by the passage of time. At 64, he was no longer the young, carefree man who could charm his way through anything. He was tired, and the demands of his career and personal life were weighing on him. Amal, on the other hand, remained as focused
and driven as ever. She continued to thrive in her legal career, while George often found himself reflecting on the past, wishing for simpler times. Despite the distance and challenges, there were moments of grace. Their twins, Ella and Alexander, continued to fill their lives with joy. Though their marriage may have faced difficult times, George and Amal continued to share a deep bond, built on mutual respect and love for their children. The quiet separation. George Clooney and Amal Alamuddin's struggle. In the months following the birth of their twins in 2020, the world's most admired couple, George Clooney and Amal Alamuddin, seemed to glide effortlessly through the glare of public scrutiny. Their fairy tale romance had captivated the media for years, but as the years passed, cracks began to show. By early 2025, rumors of a separation were swirling through the tabloids, despite the couple's efforts to maintain a facade of unity and bliss. While they kept the details of their relationship private, their actions hinted at a different reality, a growing emotional distance that neither had been prepared to confront openly. Amal had taken their twins to England, where she continued her work at Oxford University and spearheaded multiple high-profile humanitarian projects. George, on the other hand, remained in New York, immersed in the intense preparations for his Broadway debut. As the physical distance between them grew, so did the emotional rift. The quiet separation became a topic of speculation, and although they never confirmed or denied the rumors, their lives seemed to move in parallel, each pursuing separate paths that were no longer shared. The pressure of time. Apart. A trial separation. By March 2025, whispers about a trial separation grew louder, with friends of the couple confirming that this time apart wasn't just for work, but also a period of introspection and reflection. Amal, deeply committed to her work and responsibilities, had found a sense of purpose in the structure of her life. For her, the distance was not a break, but a necessary step in prioritizing her passion and goals. For George, however, the separation felt different. His time in New York, surrounded by the hustle and bustle of Broadway rehearsals, only emphasized the loneliness he was starting to feel. The once thriving life they had built together now felt like a distant memory, and he was unsure of how to reconcile the man he was with the man he had once been. The tabloids played into the drama, creating narratives about cheating, bitterness, and a rocky marriage. But the Clooneys, ever the professionals in handling their public image, remained tight-lipped. They continued to appear together at events, sharing smiles for the cameras, yet their private lives seemed to be falling apart quietly. While neither of them confirmed the rumors, the silence between them spoke volumes. The strain of fame and ambition. A relationship changed. As 2025 unfolded, the strain of fame, ambition, and distance began to take a visible toll on George and Amal's relationship. On the outside, they appeared to be the perfect couple, beautiful, successful, and seemingly inseparable. But those closest to them knew the truth. The couple who had once shared everything now lived parallel lives. Their personal dreams had once aligned, but over time, their ambitions seemed to have grown in different directions. Amal had thrived in her role as an international human rights lawyer, achieving new professional heights with every passing year. She had become even more entrenched in her work, taking on global issues and earning accolades for her contributions to both law and humanitarian efforts. George, on the other hand, had thrown himself into his Broadway debut, a career move that marked a major shift from his Hollywood past. Though he was passionate about acting on stage, the transition had proved difficult. The rigors of theater, the constant rehearsals, and the demands of a new creative outlet were far more taxing than he had anticipated. But his work was also a way of escaping the growing tension at home. The couple's aspirations had diverged. Amal, who had once been an iconic figure in the world of law and advocacy, was now an even more formidable force in her field, while George, in his 60s, had moved into a new phase of his career. But the transition was not without its struggles. What had once been a harmonious union built on shared dreams and ideals now felt strained and increasingly disconnected. George and Amal, the future of a once perfect pair. By 2026, George and Amal had learned to maintain their public image despite the growing distance in their private lives. They continued to make appearances together at galas and public events, smiling for photographers and putting on a united front. However, those who were close to them saw the change. They were no longer the inseparable couple that once sparked admiration across the globe.
They had become experts at living separate lives while keeping up appearances. Despite the challenges they faced, both George and Amal continued to pursue their individual careers with tenacity. George was committed to his Broadway career, and Amal remained a leading figure in international law, yet as both were caught up in their respective worlds, they found themselves living in parallel instead of together. The passion and connection they once shared were no longer as evident. In private, George admitted to feeling haunted by the passage of time. He was no longer the youthful, carefree man who could charm his way through any situation. His ambitions had shifted, but with that shift had come a sense of existential doubt. He was struggling to come to terms with his aging and how that played into his marriage. Amal, on the other hand, had grown more radiant and more focused than ever. Her sense of self and purpose seemed to have strengthened with age, while George struggled to keep up with her pace. Despite the tension, their love for their children, twins Ella and Alexander, provided moments of joy. Amal's unwavering support for George remained a pillar in their relationship, even if that support seemed increasingly disconnected from the emotional intimacy that once defined their marriage. Conclusion: a love tested by time and ambition. The relationship between George Clooney and Amal Alamuddin has never been simple, and like any high-profile couple, it has faced its share of challenges. But the story of their relationship is not one of scandal or betrayal. It is the story of two individuals who, while deeply connected, are also navigating the complexities of fame, ambition, and time. George and Amal, once seen as the epitome of a Hollywood fairy tale, now find themselves testing the limits of their marriage. They both entered their relationship with strong ambitions, but those very ambitions, coupled with the pressures of fame, have strained their bond. As they continue to grow and change, they must confront the reality that their love, like any relationship, is not impervious to the passage of time. Their journey together is a reminder that love is not always a perfect, unbroken thread. Even the strongest relationships face challenges, sometimes from within, sometimes from the world around them. George and Amal's relationship may continue to evolve, but their story is ultimately one of growth, self-discovery, and resilience. Whether or not George and Amal's love story has a happy ending is yet to be determined, but one thing remains certain: their journey together, marked by both triumphs and struggles, will continue to inspire as it reflects the complexities of love in the public eye. The future of their relationship may be uncertain, but their story is a testament to the enduring power of love, even in the face of ambition, fame, and time.